Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. We're going to talk about pressure today because already just off the bat in Formula 1, you're under a lot of pressure. There is a limited number of slots on the grid. Only 20 drivers can take part in a Formula 1 season and therefore you are under a lot of pressure to perform. Some drivers though are under less pressure than others, especially if you've performed incredibly well over the last few seasons.
It's not fair, eh?
So I decided to put together a tier list of those drivers who are under the least pressure in 2023, maybe because of their performances or because they're in a seat that's not very highly contested, to those drivers that are in incredible amounts of pressure in 2023 to deliver, or they probably won't be around for very much longer. This is how it went. Yuki Tsunoda is an interesting one to come up first for me because he is definitely pressure cooker levels of pressure going into this 2023 season. It's his third year in Formula 1. He's no longer got Pierre Gasly beside him, so he now really needs to be that number one driver at AlphaTauri for this 2023 season. And he's also in a Red Bull team. And we know that Red Bull, if you don't deliver, they just chuck you in the bin and get another one in as soon as they possibly can. So he is under a lot of pressure to deliver this year. And if he doesn't, I think this could be the end of the Japanese driver in Formula 1. Valtteri Bottas is a weird one, right? Because he should be very relaxed. He delivered really well in his first season at Alfa Romeo, but I think he's under just a little bit of pressure, especially because Audi are coming in a couple of years. He knows that he needs to kind of stick in that seat until Audi come around. He's talked about himself wanting to know and wanting to have a bit of clarity on where he's going to be in a couple of years' time. So I think he's under just a little bit of pressure to deliver. Otherwise, Audi will start looking at other drivers to be the driver that they build around when they come in. George Russell, well, he has literally just outperformed a 7-time world champion in a Mercedes car. His first year at Mercedes was pretty much as good as it could possibly be. I think he can be very relaxed that he is kind of the future of Mercedes in this 2023 season. If it doesn't quite go right, I still feel like they'll definitely keep hold of him for 2024 and for the foreseeable future, to be honest. And his teammate Lewis Hamilton is next, and again, probably very relaxed. You don't win 6 world championships with a team and then them just decide to get rid of you. I think Lewis Hamilton can basically choose as and when he has contract extensions with the Mercedes team for forever until he decides to retire, to be honest. So he is going to be very relaxed in the 2023 season, although he will definitely want to win more races in 2023 than the 0 wins in 2022. Sergio Perez is an interesting one for me. He should be under no real pressure, right? He delivered fairly well in 2022, definitely improved in the 2022 season compared to 2021, has helped Max Verstappen win back-to-back drivers' titles, and also took Red Bull to a first constructors title in a very long time. But I think he's hot under the collar. He's got Daniel Ricciardo just behind him in the reserve driver role. People are already talking about Daniel Ricciardo taking his seat away from him midway through the season. The season hasn't even started yet. So Sergio Perez is under a bit of pressure. He's going to be a little bit hot under the collar as the Mexican going into the 2023 season. Even though he's got a contract for 2024, I think Red Bull might want to change it up at the end of the year. And I think Sergio Perez over Max Verstappen is definitely the driver they'd look to change up. Nico Hulkenberg for me is probably under no real pressure. I think Haas know exactly what they want from Nico Hulkenberg. They just want a driver that is going to get around the Formula 1 grid without crashing into the walls and cost them less money than Mick Schumacher. I think that's exactly why they've brought him in. And I think he's under no real pressure to perform above that expectation. He just needs to do the driving, get the car around, and then maybe pick up some points here or there. I don't think he'll outperform Kevin Magnussen, and therefore I don't think he's under any real pressure. I think he'll kind of stick around for 2024 as well. And then if Haas are in a position where they're a little bit more comfortable financially, and they're a little bit more comfortable in the Constructors' Championship, then maybe Nico Hulkenberg moves on and they look for someone else to kind of push the team forward. Charles Leclerc is next up on the list, and I think Charles Leclerc is probably a little bit higher than you think. I think especially because last season he was expected to kind of perform at that level where he was battling for championships. I think not to lose his seat as such, but in terms of like the perspective on Charles Leclerc and how fans feel about Charles Leclerc, I think he could be a little bit hot under the collar when it comes to this season. I think we're expecting big things from Charles Leclerc. We're expecting race victories. We're expecting pole positions. We're expecting a title challenge if the Ferrari car is there for him. And he made a few mistakes last year. I'm thinking France. I'm thinking Imola. Those mistakes need to be eradicated. And Charles Leclerc is under a bit of pressure to perform at a higher level for me. Lando Norris, though, absolutely no pressure whatsoever. He is Mr. McLaren right now. If anything, McLaren are under pressure to deliver Lando Norris a car so that Lando Norris will actually stay with the team so that he won't be looking to like a top three. I think if you're Mercedes, you're Ferrari, you're Red Bull, and you've got a free seat coming up, Lando Norris is probably the first driver that you ask if he'd like to come into that seat. And McLaren need to do everything they possibly can to hold on to Lando Norris because he is a gem of the Formula One grid right now. He is under no pressure whatsoever. Esteban Ocon, I think he's under just a little bit of pressure for me coming into the 2023 season. I think, they've given him that contract. He wasn't incredible in 2022, but he was very, very consistent. But with Pierre Gasly coming into the team, I think the team dynamic completely changes. It's no longer this like aging Fernando Alonso who might retire at any point. It's Pierre Gasly who's in a similar place, has been in Formula One for a similar amount of time. And the pressure between those two to deliver is going to be quite high, I think. But maybe because Ocon has been there a little bit longer, he's under just a little bit of pressure. Whereas his teammate Pierre Gasly is now making that step up, right? It's the first time that we're seeing Pierre Gasly in a higher midfield team that is expecting to get points every single Grand Prix, is expecting to be in Q3 every single qualifying, and therefore there's quite a lot of pressure on Pierre Gasly to outperform Esteban Ocon, in my opinion. And because it's his first season, there's going to be more eyes on him. I think he's going to be a little bit hot under the collar. Carlos Sainz is an interesting one for me. I think he's under like a little bit of pressure. I think, again, because Ferrari are probably going to deliver a car that is going to be top three, there is an expectation to maybe win a race or two, get a pole position or so over the course of the season. But I don't think we are, and I don't think Ferrari are expecting him to be that clear title contender in the same way that they are expecting that from Charles Leclerc. I think Carlos Sainz definitely sits in that sort of second driver role that could potentially do a little bit better than being the second driver. I think there's a little bit less pressure on Carlos Sainz, especially as he was improving a lot towards the end of 2022. Took him a little bit longer to adapt to the 2022 regulations. Now that he's adapted, 2023 can kind of show what he's got, but he's only under a little bit of pressure for me. Fernando Alonso, no real pressure on Fernando, is there? There's no pressure for Fernando to deliver something absolutely sensational in the Aston Martin car, even though it's his first season with Aston Martin, and you could argue the same kind of thing that there is with Pierre Gasly. I don't think they're expecting, a race win or something incredible from Fernando Alonso. I don't think he's under any real pressure. I think, if anything, they want to keep hold of Fernando as a world champion. I think they lost out on world champion Sebastian Vettel, so they brought in champion Fernando Alonso to kind of replace him. They want to hold on to Fernando Alonso more so than Fernando Alonso is that bothered about Aston Martins. Whereas there is definitely some pressure on Zhou Guanyu. It kind of pains me to say because he did really well in his first rookie season in 2022, but again, because of the fluctuation that we're going to see with Alfa Romeo into Sauber, into Audi over the next few years, Zhou kind of needs to show that he can be that midfield driver consistently and he can deliver on a really high level consistently over the course of an entire season. We saw sparks, we saw bits and pieces from Zhou. He got very unlucky with lots of issues with retirements in that Alfa Romeo car. But now, second season, needs to take another little step up. If he's going to stay for the Sauber ride, he needs to show that he's worth it. If he's going to stay for the Audi ride, he needs to show that he is incredibly good and a driver that Audi can build around for the future. Kevin Magnussen. I think Kevin Magnussen might be under a little bit more pressure than Nico Hulkenberg, just because Nico Hulkenberg has kind of come in to be this level head in Haas, whereas I think in Haas, Kevin Magnussen has almost become this figure of something bigger, right? He got that pole position. He's got the most points of any Haas driver ever. He's become this framework that Haas kind of expects something good from him. Plus, on top of that, he left so many points on the table last season, so many first lap incidents that cost him so many points over the course of the season that I feel like Haas expect a little bit more from Kevin Magnussen coming into this year because he's had that experience now in the 2022 car. Moving into 2023, I think he's under just a little bit more pressure than he was last year. Max Verstappen, probably could have talked about him a little bit earlier. He's just won 2 back-to-back World Drivers' Championships, and he is basically Mr. Red Bull. If there's anyone who can be relaxed about the fact that they're going to stick in Formula One for the foreseeable future, it's Max Verstappen. You don't win 2 world titles back-to-back with Red Bull, and then they just sack you off. You are probably sticking around for the long haul. Nick de Vries. Nick de Vries, Nick de Vries, Nick de Vries. I think he's under just a little bit of pressure to put, maybe even hot under the collar, you know. We're looking at a Formula E and a Formula 2 champion, someone who came into their first race in Formula 1 and got points, and somebody who's at an AlphaTauri team. And the AlphaTauri team, again, Red Bull have a lot of drivers that they can swap out. Nick de Vries, he's right on the cusp of me. I'm going to put him in just a little bit. Just a little bit of pressure on Nick de Vries to deliver in his first Formula 1 season. I know he's a rookie, but because we've seen him in a Formula 1 car so many times before in various testings and practices, plus we've seen him in Formula E and Formula 2 and go on to win those series, I think there is a little bit of pressure on him to perform. Alex Albon, though, there is no real pressure whatsoever. He was so good in his first year at Williams. He is currently what Williams need to be thinking about for kind of the next couple of seasons. I think up until 2026, Alex Albon is kind of the driver that they need to keep hold of, build around, offer a car where he can deliver those point scoring opportunities for himself every now and then. I think, again, Williams are going to be towards the back of the pack in 2023, so there's a little bit of pressure, but no real pressure on Alex Albon to deliver anything other than just consistent races and maybe finishing, you know, in and around 12th, 13th every now and then, maybe a 10th place like once or twice over the course of the season to kind of give them a little bit of hope. Lance Stroll was an interesting one for me because I want to say hot under the collar. Like, he should be, right? There should be an expectation for Lance Stroll to deliver at this point. He's been in Formula 1 long enough, and he hasn't really done enough for me to properly warrant him moving to, like, any team higher than Aston Martin, which kind of makes sense, right? He's kind of stuck around that Aston Martin team. On top of that, his dad literally owns the team. So he's definitely not going to be under pressure to deliver and will keep that seat in 2024. But in terms of where he should actually be, I think he should be a little bit hot under the collar. I think we should be expecting more from Lance Stroll in 2023, and we should want more from Lance Stroll in 2023 moving into 2024 to show that he can kind of be the future of Aston Martin, right? They've just gone and got Fernando Alonso in, which doesn't really show much hope for Lance Stroll, in my opinion. And therefore, I think he's hot under the collar. He should be under a little bit more pressure than we're maybe giving him credit for. Logan Sargent, also a rookie coming into this season with Williams. I'm going to put him in no real pressure as well, alongside his teammate Alex Albon. I think we're expecting Logan Sargent to be much better than Nicholas Latifi, an upgrade on Nicholas Latifi. But again, what can we really expect from that Williams car? What can we really expect from the Williams team? I'm really looking forward to seeing Logan Sargent in qualifying and see what he can do in that Williams car when it's light, when it's on those soft tyres, and he just gets the opportunity to really throw everything at it. But in terms of race pace, in terms of points, I don't think there's any real pressure on Logan. Although I can't say the same for the final man here. Oscar Piastri, for me, goes right into pressure cooker. And I know it's his rookie season, and I know I should maybe be a little bit more lenient on him. But for me, he goes into pressure cooker because of the absolute craziness that saw him join McLaren Formula 1. You cannot turn down Alpine out of absolutely nowhere, jump ship, go to McLaren Formula 1 and not think that you're going to be under pressure to perform straight away. He's a Formula 2 champion as well. He needs to basically outperform the Alpines. If the McLaren and the Alpine are pretty close together in terms of their track performance, he basically needs to finish ahead of Esteban Ocon and ahead of Pierre Gasly to basically show that he made the right decision in going to McLaren, right? If they are close to each other, he needs to deliver. Oscar Piastri is under a lot of pressure, and it's kind of his fault that he's under this pressure. But I think he's under a lot of pressure to deliver in 2023.